Hello again, and welcome to all you legendary lunatics out there. I, as usual, am your host, the generous Lord Jester Jack himself. And today I've got with me Astoria, our little princess. She can kind of be an asshole too, but she's kind of doing her own thing right now. And I figured what better way to spend a nice rainy day than getting into some more scary stories. But I don't have the second or third copy of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Instead, I've got Super Scary Stories for Sleepovers. I believe this is Volume 1 by Q.L. Pierce. And as always, we're going to have some beautiful accompaniment by Mr. Myuuji, who probably has never even heard of my channel before, but that's okay. I've heard of his. So, without further ado, we'll get right into it. We'll probably only read a story or two, as I've got some stuff going on today that we can't really stick around and read too long for, but maybe tomorrow we'll have longer videos. Without further ado, the first story, Flesh and Blood. Charlie let out a huff when he saw the dark rain clouds. "Not today," he whined. "The guys and I were going to play soccer." He was standing outside with his father, who was just getting to the car to go to work. His father slammed the car door, rolled down the window. "You'll just have to find something to do indoors." He paused for a second. "I've got it. There's a new exhibit from Egypt. There's a new exhibit from Egypt in the museum. Why don't you and your friends go check that out?" "Thanks, Dad," Charlie said unenthusiastically. His father shrugged. "Well, I tried." Rolling up his window, he started his car. Charlie watched his father drive off, then went inside and flopped down on the well-worn easy chair. The newspaper was on the coffee table, and Charlie was absent-mindedly beginning to flip through it when an article about the Egyptian exhibit caught his eye. A moment later, he was on the phone with his friend, Sean. "It sounds pretty cool," Charlie said excitedly. "There's a real mummy on loan from the Single Falls History Museum. And get this, the article says that the mummy is some royal person who got in big trouble and was cursed." Sean snickered. "Yeah, right." Then he let out a big sigh. "Well, there's nothing better to do." Within an hour, Charlie and Sean were waiting on the lobby of the museum. Sean had also called Gordon and Christy to join them. The two were walking up already. "Hey guys," said Gordon, a lanky boy wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. Hey Gordon," Sean responded. "Hey Christy," he called to the young girl pushing her way through the turnstile. Christy grinned. "So let's go see this creepy mummy dude. Maybe he's cute," she said. They laughed, and the museum was made up of 5 small separate wings. The Egyptology wing had scale models of the pyramids on display, and more of ancient Egyptian relics. In the middle of the room was the mummy, and the kids made a beeline for it. "Wow, cool!" Gordon exclaimed, leaning over the railing. The sarcophagus was tilted up, making it easier for the kids to get a look at the dry, shriveled body inside. "Gross," said Christy, turning away. The mummy was the dark color of swamp mud. Bits of rotting clothing hung from it, and a few wiry tufts of hair seemed plastered to the grinning skull. "Yep," Charlie said with a smile. "There he is. In the flesh, so to speak." Christy giggled at Charlie's joke, then went over to read the sign. The wall beside the display. "It says here that he was an Egyptian prince," she reported. "It seemed he was a nasty character, and a lot of people disappeared during his reign." "Yuck!" she shrieked in disgust. "He was accused of draining blood from others? It says he thought that the life force of his victims would keep him young so he could live forever. When he got caught, they killed him by draining away all his blood." "Freaky." Sean gazed in awe at the dry corpse. "So much for living forever. He's dead as a doornail in there." Gordon widened his eyes. "Maybe not. Perhaps," he kidded in a deep, heavy, accented voice. "Perhaps he is merely sleeping, and when the moon is full, he will awake and take his revenge." The others chuckled as Gordon drew one arm into his chest and held the other arm out and limped stiff-leggedly towards Christy. "Go away, you idiot," she laughed and pushed him away. Charlie stared at the mummy. Maybe Gordon's onto something. Sorry, I had a little technical difficulty. Thought we were having an emergency, but we're good. I'm sorry. Christy shook her head. They dug up this guy nearly a year ago and he hasn't moved a muscle. Full moon or not. Well, maybe the conditions weren't right, Gordon said, half seriously. Or maybe he really does get out of his coffin and stalk the city at night. No one can watch him every minute of the day, so there's no way to know for sure. Yes, there is, Charlie said enthusiastically. We could stay overnight and watch him. Looks like this old guy could use some company anyhow. Gordon shook his head. Nah, my mom expects me home by supper time. Besides, the guards won't let us stay all night. You can call your mom and say you're spending the night at my house. We can all come up with something, Charlie reasoned. And the old guards won't be any problem. We can hide in the bathroom until they lock up. The museum doesn't even have a night watchman, just a guard service who drives every once in a while. I know because my Uncle Arlo works for the service. Christy didn't seem convinced. I don't know, she said hesitantly. What if we want to get out? Charlie grinned. There's a window by the delivery entrance. Arlo's complained that he's found it open a couple times. I'll just check to make sure it isn't latched tonight before we hide. But the alarm system will go off if we go through the window, Christy pointed out. So what? Sean said, grinning. We'll be long gone by the time they get in here. I say we do it. Come on, Charlie coaxed. It'll be fun. Gordon and Christy looked at each other, then smiled and nodded. Then they each went off to call home. The guard opened the bathroom door and stepped inside for a final check before closing it for the night. Standing up on the toilet in the last stall, Charlie held his breath. Finally, the guard let the door swing shut, and Charlie let out a big sigh. Sean and Gordon, in stalls on either side of him, did the same. They waited a few moments, then Sean tiptoed to the door and peered out. He's gone, Sean whispered hoarsely. Then all of a sudden he drew back. Somebody's coming! The boys pressed themselves against the wall as the door swung open. Having fun? Christy asked, peeking around at them. You guys look pale, she said, laughing. Very funny, Charlie muttered. Look, it's getting dark. Maybe we should find some of the guards' flashlights. I don't feel like sitting around here if we can't see anything. I've got a pen light on my keychain, Gordon offered. We can use it to go through the storage closets. After a search through a couple of closets, Gordon's idea paid off, and the 4 kids now shared 2 flashlights. It sure looks different in here now, Gordon murmured, as they made their way to the Egyptology wing. It's spooky. A dim light glowed here and there from various wall displays. It was definitely spooky, especially with each one of their footsteps echoing in the ceramic tile floors. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea, Sean muttered. And suddenly, Christy froze. What was that? She cried out. Sean turned his flashlight in the direction of the rustling sound. The beam fell on a huge, shimmering face with blood-red eyes and sharply pointed teeth. Yeah! Gordon yelled. Chill out, Charlie shot back. It's only a mask on the wall. He passed the light around the edge of the image, and everyone could see that the long moss-green feathers had decorated it. One feather was moving slightly, creating a rustling sound. There must be some air coming from the vent, he guessed, trying to slow his rapidly beating heart. Well, I've had enough, Gordon said firmly. You can call me a chicken all you want, but I'm leaving now. I'm with Gordy, Christy added. You guys can stay, but I'm going home. Where's that window at, Charlie? Sean looked at Charlie. They're right, he said. There's no point in doing this if it's not going to be any fun. Let's go. Charlie finally agreed, and he led their way through the spooky Egyptology wing, down a series of halls and out the back to the delivery entrance. There it is, Charlie said, shining the light towards a small window about 6 feet up the wall. See, the latch isn't hooked. He pointed to a big crate. Help me push this underneath so we can reach it. Quickly, the 4 kids shoved the crate over. Ow! Sean complained. He held up a cut thumb for the others to see. I'm going to the bathroom to wash it off. Gordy, hand me the flashlight. And don't you guys have fun without me, okay? I'll be right there. Don't you leave. Ah, fresh blood, Gordon said jokingly. If there are any night creatures around, the bloody thumb should get their attention. Maybe it'll even wake up King Tut in there. Shut up, Christy demanded. She was almost in tears. Well, excuse me. I was only joking. Don't have a cow. We'll be out of here in a few minutes anyways. Well, maybe we won't, Charlie said softly. There are bars across the window that are bolted from the outside. That must have been Uncle Arlo's idea. So now how are we supposed to get out of here? What are we gonna do? Christy moaned. We could just stay here until morning, and then tell them that we got locked in by accident, Charlie suggested. Christy shook her head. I don't want to stay here all night. This place gives me the creeps. Charlie jumped off the crate, snagging the sleeve on the his dark blue sweater. Then we'll have to call somebody to come get us, he said finally. We can use a payphone. Boy, are we going to be in trouble when Gordon began. Wait! Charlie held up a hand. I heard something. Hey, where's Sean? Christy pointed a trembling finger towards the door that led back into the main part of the museum. I thought he said he was going to the bathroom, right? She stammered. Well, he's been gone a long time, Charlie said. We need to go look for him. He picked up his flashlight and motioned for the others to follow. Sean, he called timidly. Silence followed. Sean, this isn't funny, he called again, and they entered the room where the mummy was. And just then, Charlie's foot kicked something, and he bent down to pick it up. The other flashlight, Christy said softly. That's the one Sean took with him. Suddenly, Gordon gasped and grabbed Charlie's wrist, turning it so the flashlight beam fell on something just below the sarcophagus. It was Sean, lying on the floor in a crumpled heap. Oh no! Christy raced to the boy and turned him over, then covered her mouth and held back a scream. Sean was pale. His lips looked pasty white and his skin was slightly shriveled. I don't believe this, Gordon said with a gasp, barely able to speak. The mummy. Look at the mummy. He leaned in to get a better look, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Charlie felt as if something had sucked the air completely from his chest when he saw the mummy's flesh looking fresher and more lifelike. The fingers looked as if they could simply reach out and... Look out! He screamed, but it was too late. The mummy had gripped Gordon around the throat and lifted him off of his feet, as if the 110-pound boy weighed nothing. Help me! Gordon shrieked, trying to pry away the mummy's fingers, now squeezing around his throat. Lunging forward, Charlie grabbed Gordon's shoulders and tried to pull him away, while Christy picked up a carved stone figure from a nearby display and beat it at the mummy's powerful arms. But nothing seemed to stop the wretched thing, and within seconds Gordon went limp. Charlie and Christy backed away, as they saw their friend's skin slowly dry and shrivel, while that of the mummy's appeared even more vital. Then the life-sucking creature tossed Gordon's body aside and clumsily began to struggle with the sarcophagus. We gotta get out of here, Charlie yelled, grabbing Christy by the hand. How? She screamed. We can't get by it! The grotesque being drew in a raspy, labored breath that sounded like the wind rushing down the corridors of an ancient tomb. It threw back his head and howled, raising its nearly rejuvenated arms into the air. Then it stopped, as if to listen, and slowly it turned from one side to the other. Can it see us? Christy whispered. In answer, the thing turned towards them and moved awkwardly in their direction. Let's rush it, and then split off on either side of it, Charlie whispered. With no other choice, the two terrified kids raced towards the mummy, then skirted around it. They dashed for the bank of telephones in the lobby, and stood there helplessly. Neither of them had any change. Charlie turned his pockets inside out and only came up with a few dollar bills. What are we gonna do? Cried Christy. Listen, Charlie put his hand over her mouth. The creature's labored breathing echoed in the main chamber. We've got to hide. Looking frantically around, the two finally decided on a small side room with a display of Civil War furniture. Together they slid under a huge canopied bed, just as the sound of heavy footsteps stopped right outside the entrance to the room. Charlie squeezed Christy's hand. He could feel that she was shaking uncontrollably. He was in bad shape too. Droplets of sweat stung his eyes, but he was afraid to brush them away. Everything was very still. Too still. Suddenly, Christy screeched and began to slide from under the bed, feet first. It's got my foot! She cried, clawing at the floor. Charlie grabbed onto her hand, but he could feel her slipping away from him. Then all at once, Christy was wrenched out of his grasp. Covering his ears to block out the sound of her tortured struggle, Charlie knew there was nothing he could do. Then he felt a powerful hand brush his own foot. It's looking for me, his mind shrieked. He kicked at the mummy's fingers and rolled out from the other side of the bed. In the dim light of the wall display, he could see that the mummy's body was almost completely renewed. All it needed was the life force of one more victim, but Charlie was determined to defy the monster. Dashing toward the main hall, he could see that the windows were barred there too. Charlie knew the front door was the only chance. He had to go for it, or the mummy would find him sooner or later. Making up his mind, he picked up the chair and tossed it into the tall glass display that housed early American farm tools. The glass shattered, showering the room with sharp splinters that bit into Charlie's sneakers. He inched towards the display and grabbed a long metal bar, once used as a hoe. Then, racing from the front door, he began to pry the lock. To his relief, a high-pitched alarm began to scream into the night. "Please, open!" Charlie cried. Without turning, he could sense that the thing was behind him, perhaps only inches away. He could smell the stench of something that had ceased living many centuries ago, something that shouldn't be walking the earth again, but it was. He felt the lock snap and suddenly give way. The door flew open, and a rush of cold air burst in. The first police car flew into the parking lot and screeched to a halt in a flurry of flying gravel. "Look!" one of the officers yelled. "There's someone running towards the back of the building." "I'll get him," the second officer responded as she threw open the door and charged with at the retreating figure. Moments later, she returned. "I lost him," she said, glancing at the 3 other cars that had arrived. "What's going on, Sergeant?" "It's a lot more than just a break-in," her partner answered. He pointed to a body just inside the front door. The female officer gasped and turned away. There, wearing a dark blue sweater, were the remains of a body. It was totally dried and withered. "There's 3 more inside," another officer said, stepping out through the door. "This is impossible. What could have happened here?" The female officer glanced up. "There's at least one person out here who knows," she said solemnly. "We're gonna have to try and find him." From among the shadows on a hilltop overlooking the museum, something drew a deep, cold breath of air into its fresh lungs. It felt the warm blood flowing once again through its body. With its newly formed eyes, it gazed down on the lights of the small town it housed unexpected prey. And it smiled. Now, it's been a while since I've read these stories. I read this storybook. I remember that one. I don't know if I ever ended up finishing it. But I remember I read these because I got them at a garage sale before I got the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books. Those stories are a bit longer than I remember them being, though. I don't think there's any really short ones. I think they're all pretty much several pages, but there's some illustrations. Not nearly as many, but... And if I remember right, the illustrations, they're not nearly as terrifying as the others. But it's interesting. It's cool, because, like, if I recall, the scary stories in this one aren't bad scary stories. They're pretty good. I remember taking them to a couple sleepovers when I was younger, trying to get everyone to be like, "Hey, let's read some scary stories," and no one else wanted to read. So they didn't want me reading to them at the time, but I remember having them for a very long time. And you can tell because the books are very worn and beaten up. But I think that's all we're going to do for tonight. I know we only read one story, and it's kind of a letdown maybe, but we're going to a haunted house tonight, me and Abby. And after that, we're going to go to a party, a Halloween party, and hopefully we'll have a great time. I'm sure we will. Every time I get to go do something with her, I have a lot of fun. She's a blast to have around. So, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, remember to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you didn't like, please press the like button and leave a comment as to why you didn't like it. That might sound contradictory if you didn't like it to leave a like, but I don't have many likes. So if you leave me some likes, I'll try and do better next time. But thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to hear from you again soon. I'll check you out next time. Remember, sit back, relax, and enjoy the darkness around you, because if you don't, who will? I don't know, I need to think of a better catchphrase. But that'll do it for us tonight. So thank you all so much. Have a great evening, and remember, you are loved.